Hello everyone, welcome to my second game in the International Championship. This game is a three-player game against Veivi and Pascaltopia. Before we get into this game, I want to just quickly go over some of the previous results from my group. As you can see on the screen now, there's only two games that were completed before this one. One where I won against Herostrafio and MM34NN, and another one where Herostrafio won against MM34NN, Trigger, and Mushan. As you can see from the results here, Mushan has actually timed out in his first three games, and he actually consistently decided to resign in any of the other games, I believe, since it happened in one of my other ones. So unfortunately, Mushan, who's a very good player, seems to have decided to take a break or decided to quit playing TTA for now. So it's going to be a little bit unfortunate whenever a game comes up against him, seeing as it'll adjust the player counts. So I hope that it doesn't really affect things too much, but we'll just have to see what's up. Alright, so let's just jump right into the game. Looking at the leaders and wonders. At first glance, if I look at the last row, or the age 3 leaders, it looks like labs in general are going to be really important in the sense of computers and scientific methods. Spaceflight, Empire State, Internet, they all work really well with computers. Empire State because of Gates, of course, Internet, Spaceflight, as well with Meyer. In general, there are some cultural leaders with Fleming, Marlene, Chaplin, but there's no Hollywood or anything like that. There's Mandela and Red Cross, so there's some possible colonization synergy. But there's no Suez. There are some support leaders, though, for colonization with Cook and Maria. And for the cultural leaders, there's Gaudi and Shakespeare to lead into the theater and library leaders. There's also Darwin, which could either go in from labs or libraries. And there's Nobel and Newton, which could also support a very high science game. Going from age 1, there's definitely some strength matters leaders, some vague colonization with Isabella and Eleanor, and also Leo could go up the line with the science leaders. There's also Sun Tzu in the game, he's not on the row, but he could jumpstart that colonization strategy, and then just some smattering of solid leaders and wonders and stuff that I generally find pretty irrelevant in the age 8 row because these are generally going to be pretty flat regardless. Anyways, you can see that Veivi took Hammurabi. I think that makes a lot of sense because if he leaves Hammurabi, for me, I could take a leader and a wonder for one civil action each. Basically, he forces me to choose for what I want, and I decided to go take the Roman roots and cultural heritage here. I do think that it's possible that pyramids is probably better, since I really like civil actions, but what I decide is kind of the same line as what Veivi decides, is that I don't want to give the best combination of a leader and a very solid wonder for Pascaltopia. So if Pascaltopia wants to pick up a leader and wonder, it has to be Stonehenge now, instead of Boudica and Roman roads. But Boudica does come with a risk, since Alex is in the game as well. Might not get the first trigger, and that's the really important one. Might not get the first normal trigger. You can get the military one, and this is usually pretty bad to get as the first one, since you really don't want to dedicate your population into a warrior straight out. But still a solid leader overall, and maybe you can stomach just building a warrior first and kind of delay one of your labs or mines for a little bit. In any case, I do go with the Roman roads and the cultural heritage. These are both kind of slow, so I'm going to have to kind of be a little bit wary about my civil action economy going through age 1. And then Pascaltopia does take pyramids here, and patriotism. Probably wants to avoid Boudica because of Alex, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So, Veivi Alex Hammurabi takes Stonehenge, takes Richland, and then does some normal stuff afterwards. Here, I decided to take Alex. All the other leaders are on 2 civil actions, so they're essentially just as civil action intensive as Alex. Unfortunately, it means that he's a very slow leader to transition out of since I don't get civil action back. I already have a 4-step wonder. I already have a slow card here. I'm gonna have to really be careful about not wasting civil actions in age 1. I do really like the fact that I get to double stack these yellow tokens, and it'll be a very, very long time before I hit consumption. But like I said, I've have the same kind of. I played this in my last game. I just have to really be careful about just doing the actions that matter and not taking random cards or speculating or anything. Afterwards, I do normal stuff. Pascaltopia here. He takes Sun Tzu. So kind of have to worry about strength a little bit. I'm thinking that I'll have extra population, so maybe I'm not as pressured as Veivi is. But it's not just something I have to be careful about in general, just because Sun Tzu can definitely warp the game. Anyways, Veivi takes irrigation, takes printing press, going for the possible Shakespeare that's in the game. Also hasn't built a lab yet. Could be greedy because Pascaltopia could threaten a lot of strength here. Or could kind of stretch your population. But this irrigation kind of offsets that a little bit, has an extra happy face from Stonehenge. So it could definitely work out. But it's just kind of to note, printing presses can be very scary if Pascaltopia really decides to push strength with a knight tactic really early. Anyways, I decide to use Alex's ability and take Isabella. I unfortunately decide to leave. I have to decide if I wanted to take one of these military techs, and especially I give knights to Sun Tzu on 1 civil action. Well, I give knights and swordsmen to Sun Tzu on 1 civil action, and I could definitely run into trouble, especially if he goes for knight tactics. And Veivi basically has a higher chance of getting knight tactics, the next copy of knights over me. So I do have to really be careful about that. But I did want to use Alex's ability. I do want to get a new leader. It's really hard for me to take cards on 2, so I decided to kind of just gamble a little bit, and hopefully I can make it work. Pascaltopia seeds. Gets development agriculture. Takes swordsman, which is actually pretty nice to see, instead of taking the knights, because the swordsmen are less restrictive than the knights are. So I can, even if I don't get swordsman, I can still at least copy the tactic, as opposed to if knights comes down, then I could really be in trouble. Veivi offers open borders. It does benefit him a lot, but it benefits me almost as much as it does for him. Obviously, open borders with Hammurabi is really, really good for him, so he can still draw 2 cards. But I'm not really in a position where I can say that I can easily defend against Sun Tzu. Maybe if he went for like a swordsman and finished his tactic, I would have some issues responding. Of course, I can build a legion now, so I don't necessarily need to start building up my warriors first. Next turn, I could still build 2 warriors and build a legion, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise if I only had 2 military actions. Anyways, Veivi goes for that library, increases pop, takes knights. So pretty reasonable to get the military tech on 1, and obviously doesn't need any of these cards here. Here I see the new deposits. I'm going to have 5 resource reduction without iron being built. And I do kind of controversially decide to take this masonry and use it. But it's because I have so much resource reduction. There's still plenty of wonders to get. Definitely things like Silk Road, Forbidden City, Himeji benefit a lot from having the masonry out. And I decided that I'm probably not going to need the science for iron anyways, and I can definitely build a wonder. Although I would really love to get Great Wall, it's just not possible. And although I usually find that the science cost isn't really worth it, I'm hoping that I can make use of this really, really high resource production that I have right now. Especially because I'm in a position of the game where I really might just want to take and finish like something like Himeji, since I don't really have a lot of potential strength. Pascaltopia seeds, flips development of politics, finishes pyramids, takes cultural heritage to kind of supplement the science that he's missing, and then builds a fourth mine, and then probably hopes to go for alchemy straight up next turn. He's going to be a little bit tight on population since he built this fourth mine, so I'm not 100% sure if this is okay. Usually you can't do this so early, but neither Veivi nor I are really threatening a lot of strength. So he can definitely just respond with just his tactic with Swordsman. Doesn't really need to do too much. And he can only go for one of these next turn anyways. I'm assuming he wants to go in the Alchemy and then Swordsman order. But he can still do the other one the next turn with his Cultural Heritage. So his population might be a little bit strapped, but as long as he's not militarily pressured, this should be fine. Alright, Veivi goes for irrigation, builds another lab, or builds another library, and takes alchemy. I don't know if this is, I actually think this is probably incorrect. Probably better just to increase population here, or take breakthrough. And the reason I say that is because there's almost no reason that you can afford alchemies. There's no way you're going to get a second alchemy out. Your population's already stretched into libraries. So I really don't agree with this pickup. Here I decided to seed barbarians. I have a wonder that doesn't produce any culture, so it's very likely that Veivi is going to be the one who's hit by it. Flip development of science. I do build a warrior because I really had to debate on what I wanted to do this turn, and I did take the knights in the breakthrough. I did build a warrior to get out of corruption, and this was definitely a really hard turn for me because I didn't really want these knights to begin with. And part of that is because if Pascaltopia it just stays on this fighting band, then these knights are kind of like me wasting 2 civil actions. But I felt like I really needed to take these knights because if Pascaltopia and Veivi are the one who have knights, then I'm going to be in a lot of trouble this game, especially strength-wise. And I just didn't want to have to deal with that. If I were more greedy, I could take the iron instead. Maybe start going for it. But because I really wanted to deny these knights, I didn't want to be in like strength issue. I didn't want to have a lot of strength issues. I'd had to basically waste 2 civil actions on it. I also, in theory, if I wanted to be even greedier than taking the iron, or maybe if I wanted to skip iron, I also could have just taken the St. Pete's, which would have went in line with the masonry. But like I said, these knights, I felt like they're like taunting me. I just needed to take it so that I wouldn't be in trouble this game. Then I take the breakthrough to just kind of supplement my science a little bit more, knowing that I probably want like a code of laws or something to get me out of 4 civil actions. Code of laws or monarchy. Pascaltopia seeds, flips development settlement, goes for Leo, so gets to do this part first, and then builds a warrior. So instead of building one outright this turn, he can probably just build another lab outright next turn instead, since he'll have enough science. Completes a tactic, so he'll be strongest when the deck flips. Anyways, Veivi goes for Code of Laws, using that science from Stonehenge. Also builds a 4th mine, so pretty much everybody is on everyone has extra resource production, but nobody has iron develops. So, and then he takes a drama, so it just makes sense for setting up for Shakespeare. Here, I decided to seize strategic territory. I'm Isabel, have a couple colonization cards, but I flip new deposits, and I actually don't get all of my resources. I'm going to have a lot of trouble getting out of corruption this turn, since my entire blue bank is completely empty. And what I decide to do is that I decide to go for monarchy, build another lab, build a temple to burn resources for the most part, and then build a warrior. It's pretty hard to actually get out of corruption. You can see that You can you can see that I just barely got out of corruption this way, spending I guess 8 resources this turn and 3 food, so I spent 11 blue tokens worth of stuff. And I couldn't quite afford to take Code of Laws in this turn cycle. I didn't have to build the philosophy. I could have also increased population to help with that in that regard. And maybe it's not worth it to actually take this monarchy and maybe go for Code of Laws instead, just increase population and not have 3 science production. But something that I'm thinking about in this game is that it's very possible that Veivi can get Joan or can get Jishka and kind of pressure my strength a little bit. So I might need to cancel this pact. Maybe if he's a little bit greedier, he might cancel the pact on me because he doesn't want to go for strength. Maybe he goes for like Eleanor and goes for culture. But the idea is that one of us might cancel this open borders pact, and I still want the 3 military actions left over. I do pass the Code of Laws, and that kind of hurts a lot. But I also think that these 3 labs could be very useful, like I said, with Meyer or Gates in the mix, especially with Spaceflight or Internet as a very good finishing wonder for one of these 2. Pascaltopia doesn't see, takes the breakthrough, goes for the swordsman, finishes out a tactic, and then takes Bread and Circus, because he will need the happy faces next turn probably. He does skip the Code of Laws, which I thought was pretty interesting. I think he had issues. It looks like he had a lot of issues getting out of corruption, which is why he took the line that he did. He's also barely out of corruption, and he spent also like 9 resources worth of stuff. He finishes Stonehenge, goes for Zhishka, copies the fighting band, and then builds a warrior. So for me, decide to get a little bit stronger. Again, this was mostly just because I had issues with my corruption. So I'm just doing things to kind of get out of it. I know that I'm going to need the extra happy face anyways, and I do feel like that this is perfectly fine. Probably thinking about taking and finishing Silk Road to get out of corruption next turn. I'm mostly expecting Veivi to take this iron. Yeah. And then because I adopt the tactic, that 4th warrior was definitely relevant to be not the weakest. Pascaltopia goes for iron, upgrades. Takes reserves, which I'm not really 100% sure if that's the best one. I do understand that it can get another population out, but it's pretty slow, and maybe you want to take Richland instead. You don't have a ton of civil actions, so going for reserves for food and then increasing population is a pretty slow way of getting out of it. It's not a useful population anyways, since you would need 3 happy faces in order to actually use it. So I don't know if I agree with the reserves. I think the Richland is probably just better. Here, Veivi takes the Republic and is able to go for it right away, so I think that's a really nice pickup for him this early on, and definitely sets him up in a very, very good position for this game. Because he goes for the Republic, there's basically no reason for him to go for the Iron now, and then he takes some Himeji instead, so that he can play a very defensive game with cheap urban buildings and Shakespeare, possibly. Because Veivi didn't get any stronger, I decided to kind of just like pressure his military actions a bit. I have 4 anyways, so I just make him waste a card. So I find that's reasonable. I wasn't going to see the Vast anyways. And then I thought about taking the Silk Road, but I do feel like I can upgrade Iron 3 times right here. So, or I can upgrade Iron twice and take the Swordsman here. I could have upgraded 3 times, but it's possible that the Swordsman's pretty useful. I am trying to draw, H2 tactics, and having Knights and Swordsmen available that could definitely be very useful for me. Plus, I don't have a ton of civil actions. I don't really want to I don't want to be in a position where I have to grab riflemen for 2 or 3. So if I can get H2 tactics with these two, I'll feel like I can do stuff militarily a little bit, at least. Part of the reason I pressured Veivi's military actions is because I was hoping that Pascaltopia's aggression can go through too. I know that this could help Pascaltopia a lot, but I'm actually really, really worried about Veivi in this game. I think he's the better player overall, especially in 3-player. So I really wanted to pressure his cards and actions as much as possible. Anyways, Pascaltopia goes for that arena, and then does increase pop, and then takes Gaudi. So kind of setting up for some culture here. Not sure if this is like the right leader in general. He does lead into Fleming and Marlene pretty well, but I think Pascaltopia should probably be pretty happy with Leo for a long time. And maybe that this is a good leader, but he didn't get the free religion, so it's not getting as much, but we'll see if it's any good or not. I'm not usually convinced that Gaudi is a very good leader. What I usually find is that when you develop an urban building, it's probably best to build a lot of that type of urban building as opposed to spreading it out and building like one of each. Of course, there is the one payoff leader, which is Fleming, which is you only need like one library, one theater. So that is a reason for Gaudi. Anyways, Veivi cancels that open borders, which was definitely possible. Finishes Himeji, grabs Shakespeare because that was completely expected, and then takes the Rifleman, increases pop, and then increases pop again. Could have taken like Frugality or something. I think that would have been a pretty useful card for him to take since he's still only on irrigation. And although it doesn't really help too much getting the next population out immediately, all you really want with Shakespeare is just as much population as you could possibly get. I offer international trade agreement Pascaltopia. Like I said, I'm more worried about Veivi. And then I decide to upgrade first, of course. Use the swordsman to get me out of corruption. Again, also that was part of the reason that I took it last turn, because I saw that it was going to be really hard for me to use my resources. Then I decided to take the breakthrough and the navigation. I had the vast and the autonomous in hand, and although I would have liked to seed it this turn, I wanted to definitely get the international trade agreement going. I go for the food and give him the resources, and because I have plenty of resource production, I do think that having a little trickling of food could really, really help me out. Oh yeah, I guess I also took the swordsman so that I knew that I can upgrade and be not weaker. And I don't really know what's going on in this deck too much. Besides that, there's a barbarians in it, and a strategic territory, I think. Also do develops, so I could definitely have some pretty reasonable colonization stuff going. And there's also a cook, so this could work out in that line. You know, there is that International Red Cross with Mandela idea that's still floating around. And I feel like I'm kind of hedging in between my lab play and my colony play. Anyways, call turn flips, only the second weakest, so I don't lose that much, which is kind of nice. Then Pascaltopia does go for Gaudi and builds a temple to get +3 culture from Gaudi. I don't really feel great about this. I think that getting the science production would have been a lot better from Leo. Maybe just go for the upgrade on the farm. Would have been a perfectly good way to get out of corruption. I understand that you can feel a little bit pressured to keep up in culture production, but I'm not really sure that this is the correct way of doing so, especially since he doesn't have a government yet. It's going to take a lot of science in order to get up there. This line shows me that he's really looking to try and get Harvard to supplement his science production, and to be honest, I wouldn't mind it as well, since I don't really have the most science right now. Although it would be better probably to get science from building scientific method. In general, though, I think my preferred wonder is to get Kremlin, because I'm going to be on lower civil and military actions than the others. Eventually, Pascaltopia is going to get an H2 government or an H3 government, and me being on a monarchy is kind of restricting on my civil action. Anyways, Veivi goes for Rifleman, and then upgrades to be one of the strongest, takes some resources, and takes the cannons. So not quite going for Shakespeare yet. Seems like a pretty good idea to supplement. Seems like a pretty good idea to play around some strength events and stuff. Get your strength before your culture. And, it just goes doing a lot of work already anyways, still. So, unfortunately, I would have actually really liked Kremlin as my pick of choice. But I can't take it and finish it this turn. So, that was really, really tight. It was really unfortunate that I couldn't do that. So, instead of going for Kremlin, I decide to, well, first off, I cede vast territory, flip barbarians. I decided to take Harvard and cannons and increase pop and build one more swordsman. I do this to get out of corruption. I could not do this line with Kremlin. Basically, if I wanted to get out of corruption with Kremlin, I would have had to forego the cannons, and I just didn't want to do that without having any tactics yet. I just build the swordsman outright because I know that I'm going to eventually bid for colonies. And I just don't play the navigate, and I don't play the navigation yet either yet because I'm just really tight on civil actions this turn. It also sucks that I have to miss out on Cook, but I had to make some choices here. And obviously, I don't think I can pass on a wonder because there's only one left, which is statue, and statue just doesn't do enough for me compared to the other wonders that I have up here. Well, compared to Harvard or Kremlin, basically. Pascaltopia Seeds, flips historic. I bid pretty minimally for this. I don't really care too much about it. I also know that strategic is in the deck, so Pascaltopia decides to go for Kremlin instead, and which he can afford to. Although I'm pretty sure that instead of going for Kremlin, it might have been better just to increase his food twice. But he does do this to get a little bit stronger, and that just could be relevant, that's all. And this Veivi finally goes for Shakespeare, builds some dramas, goes up to a lot of culture production, but still, I don't feel too uncomfortable too much. I have a pretty good economy otherwise. I'll have a lot of science production soon, and I just feel like he doesn't have a lot of resource production, doesn't have a lot of food production. Maybe this could be a cash up. This can stay within range, but you do have to kind of pressure him on strength, or have the ability to pressure him on strength. Anyways, I do decide to take Newton here. First I cede autonomous, flips in certain borders, so it does pressure the fact that Veivi's a little bit weaker. So you did see Pascaltopia go strongest, and fortunately Veivi didn't cede there, so I didn't have to lose the yellow token, so that's really, really nice. And then, like I said, I'm going to go for Newton, because I can see that I'm going to be really stuck on civil actions. You can see that I finished Harvard here, and I take the journalism, but I think this is completely wrong now that I'm really looking at it again, and with the benefit of hindsight, of course, but I do think this is really wrong. I stray away from the plan that scientific methods are really good for two certain leaders, and I actually really think that Sid Meier is probably just the leader of this game. Like, he can easily build a big internet or a big space flight with computers, or Newton can just supplement that, like start the science production first, get a lot of free civil actions that way, and then kind of switch off to culture or resources or something. Plus, in this game, neither Veivi nor Pascaltopia are going to really be set up for that. So if one of those two leaders came out really early, it'd be really, really strong for me. I get a little bit distracted because I see that Veivi's culture production is super high, but I definitely regret taking this journalism and not the scientific method. I think that a better turn, instead of finishing this Harvard, would just to be go for scientific method and upgrade twice. I don't really need Harvard if I have so much science coming from scientific method. I think if I upgrade twice, I'll have 10 science production total. And definitely could have been like playing more of my cards, getting more actions that were free, and just in general playing for a bigger, like a much bigger economic endgame. One of the big reasons also is because scientific method is actually pretty cheap, well, relatively cheap with a 4-cost upgrade, whereas journalisms are really expensive to go into, and I actually don't have that many resources. I don't have a lot of civil actions to take yellow cards also. So going for journalisms is a very action-intensive thing, and I think that it is not the best for me to go for journalisms in this spot. Keep it developed and the war over territory. Like I said, I need to try maybe pressure and strength wise. And yeah. Right, Pascaltopia seeds, flip strategic. I win this one pretty easily. Not a lot of contest for that. Obviously, I was looking for a tactic, and I do draw a pretty good one, so pretty happy to win that. I have defensive army now. Anyways, Pascaltopia finally goes for his farm upgrades. I really think this could have happened a lot sooner. Takes the journalism and the efficient upgrade. You can start going for journalism next turn. And, you know, honestly, he's not in a bad spot with his civil action, military action with that Kremlin. So he's looking like, obviously the science is lacking, but he has ways of increasing it, has relatively good culture production. So he's keeping up with culture with Veivi better than I am. Alright, so Veivi seeds, flips fast. It looks to me like Veivi bid two riflemen here, but that would have been 8 total, so I'm not exactly sure what he was bidding here. I guess he had 2 defense cards, which I found pretty surprising since he didn't have that many military actions. But anyways, he bids 7, so it does take me, I do have to spend an army for this, unfortunately. And, you know, I really did want to win this fast, so because I don't really have my food production upgraded yet. Anyways, Veivi goes for Ocean Liner, which definitely works really, really well with irrigations. And then is not able to finish it this turn, but has enough resources to finish it next turn with both these reserves here. I see developed, flip autonomous, and again I have to bid a lot for this. So people have forced me to spend a lot of resources on my units, but I do think that having the autonomous, having the vast will really help me out a lot. So here I did take the resources. Although I only get the 4, I do spend a lot of resources in this turn. I do need to rebuild this army. I do want to go for some other production as well. And I decided that going for the resources is best here. I kind of have enough food production already because my yellow bank's so good. So first off, I decided to pick trust system. Really good with Newton. Really helps the fact that I'm lacking some yellow token or some blue tokens from these -3. So definitely needed to do that. Do for the journalism. And then build 2 swordsmen. So you can see how this is kind of action intensive to go for these journalisms. If I had method, I could have just upgraded instead of needing to disband. So it's just one of the reasons that method could have been a little bit better. I still could have gone for it here, and that probably still would have been better than going for method, or than going for journalism. But I was really focused on the card that I had in hand, thinking that I can go into Fleming pretty easily, and you know, trying to keep up in culture production a little bit. And then with my last civil action, I take selective breeding, of course. I do think that this international trade agreement really helps a lot with the fact that, you know, I have pretty good food production even without upgrading anything. I think this is a really good pickup to draw iconoclasm, because I would need a way to kind of keep this in check. Anyways, Pascaltopia goes for journalism. Wants to increase the science production, increases culture as well. Takes breakthrough, engineering genius, which makes sense. Doesn't take the strategy, but it's pretty hard for him to get, and I mean it'd be pretty hard for him to. He has a lot of science that he wants to spend, and strategy is kind of a luxury, so it's not really for him. Anyways, Pascaltopia, he decides to finish Ocean Liner this turn. Seems pretty good. And take some more resources, Revolutionary Idea. And definitely this Revolutionary Idea is really, really important for him to pick up. With 3 science production, he wouldn't really be able to get a couple of key cards here, which would be Strategy or Military Theory, and Air Force being the other one. And you don't know, and it's possible that he needs cannons or something as well. So this Revolutionary Idea, even though it's Revolutionary Idea 2, it's still really important for him to get. One of the ways that Veivi can have issues in this game is if he just doesn't get enough military actions for a little while and doesn't draw enough cards and has to keep up his strength. And it could really limit the amount of culture he's able to generate from impacts and stuff like that. But here, military theory drops, and with strategy still in the game, it's not really easy for me to deny both. I'm gonna go for one of them, and I'm gonna have to hope that Pascaltopia goes for the other. You can see that I took the reserves here. I do want to try to use Harvard as much as I can. I don't have the highest resource production, and I do feel like I need to take resources when I can. So anyways, I do take the reserves here, decide to go for the strategy instead of the military theory. And the biggest reason here was just because I didn't have enough civil actions to build another library if I took the military theory. I did want to collect as much science as possible, and I was really hoping that Pascaltopia would take the military theory, because it's just like such a key card for Veivi to get. I wonder if it was possible to. Actually, I guess it's not possible to make strategy fall off and take military theory. So, not 100% sure if this was correct to not try and get both of these, or maybe taking just military theory would be better. And I guess another reason why I did not take military theory is that I wouldn't be able to go for cannons and selective breeding next turn, because I wouldn't have this library built. So I had to take one of them, and yeah, that's just what I do. And I wanted to get a little bit stronger than Veivi too, just because I know this is a card from Pascaltopia. Anyways, Pascaltopia goes for his cavalryman, uses efficient upgrade for a lot of food production, and his last 2 civil actions he unfortunately takes the communism, which obviously makes a lot of sense, but I really wish that he had taken military theory. But you can't deny both of them when I was on limited civil actions, so that's just going to be what it is. He's definitely planning on revolting next turn, or going for revolution next turn, so it definitely makes a lot of sense for him to do this. Maybe it's possible instead of doing the selective breeding thing, he could have maybe taken military theory instead, and would have slowed down Veivi's game. I just think that this is so important for both of us to deny as many military actions from Veivi as possible. So once Veivi gets this military theory, I think his game becomes so much smoother. So this was Pascaltopia's seed. So if I had, went for like scientific method instead of Harvard at some point earlier, I would have the extra resources from developing these cannons and stuff, but wouldn't know that. Also wouldn't have as much culture production, so a little bit difficult to say if these journalisms are correct or not. I still kind of feel like they weren't, but anyways, I do have to just play with it. Anyways, Veivi goes for military theory, and part of the reason that I kind of felt like military theory was the better card to give Veivi is because that way it uses all of his science up, and it'd be much harder to go for the next military tech afterwards. Anyways, Veivi gets a little bit stronger, takes the tanks and the Air Force, so it'll take a long time before he can get Air Force, unless he gets another revolutionary idea. But if I get, the right text or something, I get enough resources from the row, maybe I can start pressuring with this war over culture that I drew. But it's kind of a long shot. I don't even have enough resources to go for cannon. I still need to develop selective breeding. I don't have a ton of resources. Veivi has definitely taken a lot of yellow cards in front of me. And I mean, that's definitely should be the play that he does. It's just that I need to be a little bit luckier for cards to fall my way in order to have a chance, I think. At least my cultural production is quite reasonable as well now. And I still feel comfortable seeding every turn, so I can get culture that way. And there's possible an iconoclasm in this deck too. So the earlier iconoclasm flips, the better I think it will be for me. So here, I seed Civil Unrest, flips refugees, so that was pretty nice for Veivi to get there. I didn't think anything was strength related, but it looks like it's. I think Pascaltopia seeded most of these. I know it says mostly yellow and red, but I think Pascaltopia seeded most of these. I don't think it was even split. Anyways, go for some farm upgrades, and then I also build a cannon. I don't actually go for the defensive army this turn. I just wanted to get a little bit stronger. Still wanted to keep this swordsman fighting band just in case of that I really want to develop territory that's in here. And then I also take the movies. Part of the reason that I'm taking these yellow cards and using them is because I want to use Harvard as much as possible. Unfortunately, I couldn't really do very much by taking. If I took both these yellow cards here, that's basically my entire turn. So, yeah, couldn't really quite do that. I don't go for the second upgrade here yet. I'm thinking it's possible that I can pick up an efficient upgrade along the way and not have to spend the actual resources. But I'm looking at how many resources I had to spend in order to get my armies and stuff, and I really need to get it from my cards or from the yellow cards that could appear from the row. Anyways, Pascaltopia does go for the revolution, stays at a very, very low strength. So maybe it would have been better for me to go for the defensive army, maybe threaten aggression. But I'm not really worried about him overall anyways. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure why, because it looks like his position is pretty good. But I actually feel like Veivi is definitely the main contender for me in this game. I mean, I definitely feel like I can distance myself from Pascaltopia. Just because I feel like my urban building structure is very good, my population is very good, I have a really good tactic. And although there's a lot going for Pascaltopia civilization as well, just this lack of science could really affect him. Anyways. So Veivi goes for military alliance with Pascaltopia. He also probably sees me as the bigger threat. And then this is pretty much the only way that he can increase his culture production now. He's also planning on going for Marlene, so doesn't really need any more happy faces after Shakespeare expires. Just takes engineering just for kicks and takes a revolutionary idea. So Veivi got 2 of the 3 revolutionary. Got another revolutionary idea. Gives him enough science for Air Force next turn if he needs it. Which he won't, but he can definitely, play some of these texts now. So you can see how Meyer and Fleming both came down. I'm not set up in the lab sense, but I could go for movies with Fleming now. But I have to be a little bit worried about Veivi's potential strength offensively now that he can go for this Air Force. Just 1 Air Force is plus 10, and he could even stack it if he wants to. So his potential strength is at 42. And I definitely need to respond to that in some way. So going for movies with no resources on the board would definitely be a very, very risky thing to do. So instead, I flip. I can't really spend too many resources, so I think I only bid 1 swordsman here. Pascaltopia also bids 1, but had more cards. And then I do see some resources from the row, and I decide to build a positional army. I probably didn't need to reveal the tactic, but I figured might as well be the strongest. And yeah, I just figured I might as well be the strongest. That's about it. Uh, I also have a potential to have a really big war the next turn if I'm the one who gets Air Force, but that is definitely a long shot because there's so many cards left in the deck. But this could be one of those ways that I could like really do a check on Pascaltopia, because his potential strength should be a lot lower than my potential strength. If I somehow get Air Force next turn, I am threatening a war that's for 52. So definitely really strong there. Anyways, I do draw a lot of wars. So in order for this plan to work, I definitely need some more resources. Definitely would probably want some more Air Force as well. Because, in order to just finish a second army, I would need another 24 resources, and I only have 7, and there's not a lot of turns left in this game. Anyways, Pascaltopia has to respond to strength, so he does. Has classic army, takes military theory, and develops it. So he's actually quite strong now. I think if he didn't have this military theory, there's a pretty good chance that he wouldn't be able to defend. I know he has like a million military actions, but he's only really drawn, I think, like 7 cards total. So if he didn't have this military theory, being at 23 would definitely be pretty vulnerable. All right, so unfortunately, people haven't really seeded too much, so it's been a lot of turns. Iconoclasm did not flip yet. Would have really liked it to flip on this turn, especially because this 6 culture could mean a lot. And Veivi doesn't really have anything to do but go for strength, so that's what he does. Take some reserves and keeping his resources up. Here I'm able to start checking hands now that I'm flumming. And I believe I decide to check Veivi's hand first. I have to look at it though. I do check Veivi's hand first. I'm looking at the impacts that he possibly has. I knew that I wasn't going to try and aggress Pascaltopia anyways. And I think I was looking at if it was possible if he had a war here, knowing that he could war with another army here. So if he gets another knight and another Air Force, he could go up +7, +10, so 17 more strength. But he does have it, and I was definitely trying to fish out this Iconoclasm seeding impact balance. I take the reserves, take the efficient upgrade, and because I know that Veivi has a war, I had to check for it. I decided to not go for the movies this turn, and instead give myself enough resources that it looks like I could potentially defend for quite a lot. My biggest worry would be if Pascaltopia is the one who gets Air Force on this turn, and Veivi gets a war off on me. So I have to basically gather as many resources as I can before I feel comfortable building out into culture. Here, I take the rockets thinking about spaceflight, but I think that in general, I'm supposed to play out the movies first. I was thinking this might be a cheap tech using for spaceflight, but then there are some issues. I do have some civil action issues if I don't go for these movies this turn, or if I don't develop these movies this turn. And I should probably have paid attention to that a little bit more, that I have some issues with civil actions in the future if I don't just develop out these movies. I was kind of hoping possibly that I could get democracy next turn as well, but that really wouldn't make sense since the first movies gives me +7 culture anyways. So I really think that I made a mistake by taking these rockets, thinking that it'd be a cheap tech, and just going for the. And I probably should have just developed out these movies. I could still potentially get like fundamentalism if I need extra strength. So it's not like I really need having 26 floating science here. Uh, get impact of science. So this is definitely a really good impact for me if I can't get a war off, but this is definitely a really big culture gap that I have here with Veivi. And it's going to be definitely a really difficult battle to try and climb through it with not a lot of turns left. All right, Pascaltopia takes the military buildup. So now he has a lot of resources, takes fast food chains, and does these actions mostly to get out of corruption, I think. He does need to actually start this fast food chain since he's not going to get an engineering tech. And part of the reason he's doing this is that he's looking for his ways to win. There's quite a few wonders left over. He still has a lot of resources. But yeah. He also potentially could have used his engineering genius here to build the first step because there's only going to be 8 cards remaining after this turn. So it does seem pretty likely that this age will end, and it's very possible that he should have used this engineering genius. I did want to say that I missed my opportunity to get a good war off now. If I were able to get the Air Force last turn, then I don't think Veivi would or Pascaltopia would be able to defend. But now with military buildup, I feel like I'm the one who's more in trouble with potential wars coming. All right, it's Veivi Seeds, flips economic progress. People get stuff. I don't really know what else to say. Grabs Marlene, and I'm not exactly sure why he builds this lab. Possibly just to get out a tech and then adopts classic armies. So he didn't really have anything to do to spend with his resources. Has all the stuff has all the happiness that he needs from Marlene and stuff. So looks to me like he just wants to develop out one more tech, or maybe just go for impact of variety. Here I see the impact of science. I don't have enough strength to go for a war here. Yeah, and then I checked Pascaltopia's hand this turn, and even though I drew so many wars, I had like 3 or something total. I saw Veivi had a couple as well. But then when I checked Pascaltopia's hand, he also had 1 war. So unfortunately, that means I definitely need to deny these Air Force. Oh, there's a couple worlds, which is I don't spend any resources, and it's not likely that Pascaltopia can war me, even with Air Force. Or I can build the movies, but I have to deny the Air Force because I'm going to spend so many resources on building a movie. So I have a couple options. This could be take like Red Cross, maybe take civil service or something for more actions in the future. Maybe start building Red Cross, that kind of thing. Take Empire State, take Space Flight. These are all very possible things that I could do. But there's also internet in the game still. So there's still one more wonder if I don't take one now. And it's not possible for everything to get denied, basically. I do have almost perfect information since I checked Pascaltopia's hand this turn and Veivi's hand this turn. So I do know a lot of the impacts that are going on. There's things like happiness and population that are possible seeds. And then I know that like impact of culture is in Pascaltopia's hand, I believe. So even if I get more culture than Veivi, I won't get like a huge payoff for it, unfortunately. But anyways, my actions are very, very tight this turn. I do really want to go for these movies because it gives me so much culture boost. And there's an urban growth that I can use with it as well. And, well, unfortunately, Impact at Harmony flips here. But I wasn't going to improve it anyways. And I do have to take the Air Force because I really can't let Pascaltopia get a really easy war off. He has so many military actions and civil actions, he can basically do anything here. And he also has effectively 30 resources for war. So, yeah. He has a lot that he can do. Even without the Air Force, I think he can actually build. He has enough actions to actually build three um, three classic armies. But I decided that if he were to do that, he's disbanding so much that it's not going to be worth it for him. So I'm just trying to catch up as much as I can to Veivi. I think that my culture production is very good and will give me a good buffer against Pascaltopia, especially with the impacts that I know that are in hand. I really just have to score as much as I can. Go for the urban growth, and in order to get out of corruption, I am I do this to get very tight on resources. So if I had one more action, I would have been able to take the civil service here, granting me another action next turn. So it's you can see how this taking this rockets last turn and not building out the movies has really cost me. Because having an extra action is really, really important to in order to take a wonder, play reserves, and then finish it. So I kind of do all the things that I possibly can. I know that I need this for impact of happiness as much as possible. Um, I need to, and there are certain wonders that all I can do is just build the wonder, especially like intranets. The cost has so many steps. Um, but yeah, so I do have to do it this way. Can't really be in corruption this turn, and it is what it is. So, anyways, got some colonization cards. So I actually kind of know at this point there's no way that I can catch up. I don't have enough impacts for it to matter in this game, and there's just no way that I can close this gap that I have. Fortunately, Veivi can't finish a wonder or anything, so I do have that kind of hope. But I just feel like no matter what happens, there's no way I can win. Um, there's also one unknown turn for Veivi's draw. I don't know what it is, so there could definitely be some things that I have to worry about here. As Pascaltopia takes civil service, takes Mandela, finishes fast food chains, and then also grabs International Red Cross. So he definitely has a lot of points potential, um, like a lot of point potential. He's actually higher than me right now, but spaceflight's a pretty big wonder for me. I have impact of science in here. I have impact of balance in here. So those things are good for me. I know that there's no impact of government. Uh, it's possible that Veivi could have drawn it and then play it because it's better for him than me. But I pretty much do as much. I pretty much do the math, and I know that it's actually pretty much impossible for Pascaltopia to win, even with something like Impact of Government, which would be 10, 13 points over me. So yeah. Anyways, Baby Seeds, flip Civil Unrest, Pascaltopia loses a little bit more, plays the reserves, so he can build a step, goes for Mech Ag, possible impact of agriculture, uh, possible for competition and strength, and then denies the democracy. I was kind of hoping for it because I know that democracy is the one tech that I can take that's action neutral. I have a lot of science, but I don't really have a lot of actions here, unfortunately, that I can spend it. So, there I see the impact of variety. I have a really good variety, as you guys can tell, since I was filming, and then flip impact of science. So this was, I think, a little bit unfortunate. I'm not really thinking that I can beat Veivi anymore, and I wanted the full 14-point difference against Pascaltopia. They actually have the same science production, so I didn't really want this to flip on my turn or Pascaltopia's turn, but it does. I still think I'm okay, but it makes me a little bit more nervous that I don't have the extra 7 points against him. I can't really do much. I build one step on Pascaltopia's Red Cross, effectively denying him effectively a 12-point swing, and then all I can do is just finish spaceflight here. So if I had one more civil action, from civil service. I would have been able to develop out one more tech, and it would have been effectively 4 more points total as well on spaceflight. So I really got punished for taking these rockets. It might seem pretty marginal, but it's it's just it's just the reality that I want to state. Anyways, Pascaltopia seeds, plus impacted population. I also did know that was in here as well, and I didn't have the civil actions in order to increase population. Um, so a couple points lost out because I had, even though I had the food for it. Finishes International Red Cross, plays military buildup, and endowment of the arts, I believe, and then does some stuff for architecture, competition, things like that, things of that nature. I know that it's not really likely that those things are seeded. I have competition in hand, so architecture is the only other thing it's possible. This also works well for happiness, so I know that's in the deck as well. And yeah, so at the end of Pascaltopia's turn, you can see that there is definitely some pretty big gaps in between all of us. It's pretty small-ish between me and Pascaltopia. I know that, so part of the reason that I knew that I wasn't going to catch up to Veivi earlier was because all the impacts that they had were really good for Veivi between both of them. So there wasn't anything that could favor me very heavily. At one point, maybe if I had a little bit more civil actions, I could have had a better impact of technology or something. But as it stands, that's actually pretty bad for me as well. So I don't really have any hope of catching up to Veivi. And I think I basically did the math knowing that there's not a lot of impacts that will allow Pascaltopia to catch up to me, especially with things like balance, variety in here. Anyways, impact technology. So this is definitely one of the worst ones. This is 8 against me from Pascaltopia. If I, like I said, had played a little bit more efficiently, I would have 8 more points here as well. Impact colonies. I believe I seeded this one a while ago. I don't think I talked about it, but I did know that those in here. Impact to balance. This should be equal for us. I do catch up a little. I have been catching up a little bit to Veivi, but I knew impact of happiness was in. I was going to lose some here. And then impact of variety, which is just a little bit better for me than Pascaltopia, I believe. So I do have a slight gap, 9 points. If I think government was probably the best impact for Pascaltopia besides technology. So even in the worst case scenario, I don't think I could have lost. Ends up being relatively close between us though. Never really felt like I had a chance against Veivi. So that is the game. And you can now see the results from all 3 games, or the standings after 3 games in my league. Here's Strafio, as you saw earlier. He's winning the league, has 8 points over 2 games. I have 7 points over 2 games. Veivi has a win. And all the rest lagging slightly behind, but obviously with only 3 games finished, there's plenty to go through. Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, Mushan is resigning and timing out, so we don't know how that's going to affect the games. I'm really hoping that we can maybe set up games that are like alternate, so that they can just start with 1 fewer player, knowing that now that we all know that Mushan is just resigning all his games. But that's something we probably have to talk to the tournament director about or something. But I think it'd probably be a little bit more fair than to have to like have a game set up for 4 people or something and then an AI plays, which would be really unfortunate. But anyways, yeah. So basically in this game, I talked about this early. I talked about this throughout. I don't think that I played to the game plan that I wanted to from the beginning. I think that if I had went for further science production as opposed to culture production, Actually, it could have paid off a little bit more at the end. Um, Things being cheaper, the buildings being cheaper, especially methods being cheaper than journalism's would have allowed me to have a little bit more strength. I drew so many wars, but I never had the resources in order to go for strength. I never had the civil actions, and that was actually a direct result from my not having enough science. Because I could have uh, gone for better governments, but I never was able to. It's possible that I could have even built like two wonders if I had more civil actions as well and a little bit more resources. So, although I did play in a way to give myself a very high culture production, I don't think I played in a way that would have allowed bigger swings in this game. So, I'm not 100% sure if I still played well or not. I did play it in a way that would be a little bit more consistent, but I think that consistency didn't give me enough of an explosive military power, which is probably what I needed in order to win. Granted, I did take second, so this is like a pretty good result, but I do feel like Veivi is definitely my bigger contender overall. Or that might be a little premature to say, but I know that Veivi is a very good player. I've played several games with him, and he also has the one of the higher uh, ELO ratings from Payada's list. So it's possible that I should have played a little bit more dangerously, going with the lab plays and stuff. But it's hard to say exactly if it would have paid off very well because I did have three journalism start at the beginning of age three, and that gave me a lot of culture production to begin with. But then we also saw that things like Meyer came down really early. It would have. We also saw that if I was able to develop things with Newton a little bit more early on, I could have gotten a little bit extra resources from the arms industry. Um, and then I would have also had stuff like extra resources to go into military because those labs wouldn't have cost as much. I could have just turned all of my scientific methods into effectively journalism with Meyer instead, and I wouldn't have needed to build journalisms for Fleming. So definitely had a game plan that I was thinking about early, but you can see that I only ended up with one lap here. Like I said, I probably should have. Um, I really think that I should have gone for a more science focused strategy because of the spaceflight, because of the internet. But anyways, I am a little unhappy with how I played this, but I do feel like I learned a lot in this game, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.